Imagine waking up one day to visit a store and not seeing your favorite Jell-O or chocolate bar. Small disappointments like that are a part of being an adult, so let's be nostalgic and talk about foods that have not stood the test of time. Starting off with some Jell-O pudding pops is a great idea. These were some of General Foods' most heavily sold products. They first came out in Louisiana around the 1970s, but they really started taking off after the 80s. People ate these up like they grew on trees. They earned the company around $3 million annually, even into the 1990s. You would think something like that would not get discontinued due to not turning over enough of a profit. But the world works in mysterious ways. Rather, trends do, and they change faster than you can predict. People eventually lost their infatuation with the Jell-O pudding pops. General Foods tried to reintroduce them in 2004, but they were a bit too different from the original and got left in the history books forever. General Foods had a strong competitor in General Mills with their Squeezits, which were these fruit-flavored drinks that came in bottles you had to squeeze to get the drink out. Yes, the irony of both of their names is not lost on us before you say anything. Still, the branding is pretty brilliant when you think about it. It ties the experience, appearance, and name all together in one neat little package. Of course, people did not buy them to appreciate the efforts of the PR team, but because they were the perfect thing to take the edge off on a hot summer day. It disappeared around 2001, lasting around 26 years since its 1985 debut, and while it had some reintroductions in the market, it could not gain enough momentum to sustain itself. High-C Ecto coolers were these drinks you could get, which were specifically Ghostbuster-themed, and were a part of a collaboration effort between High-C and the Ghostbusters promotion campaigns. It worked pretty well since the green-colored drink meant to imitate a stereotypical image of what ectoplasm looks like, which is a liquid supposedly let out by super-powerful ghosts, sold numbers throughout the United States. While being a temporary addition of the High-C cooler drinks, it was both for its flavor and unique design a very appreciated beverage, and most teenagers and young adults would regularly buy packs of the stuff. You could get half a dozen or more for just $1 and some cents, which was a steal. Guess pre-inflation living was something else entirely, right? French Toast Crunch was another genius innovation by General Mills, and it was this cereal meant to mimic the popular breakfast by having French toast-shaped cereal. They looked like mini slices, but later they gave it a glow-up and it started looking like Cinnamon Toast Crunch. Instead of slices, you now had thin squares, but this was not as successful as the original design, as people particularly did not vibe with the thinner cereal. General Mills launched this in the middle of the 1990s when French toast itself was quite a common breakfast to wake up to for many people, but they discontinued it in 2006 as it was not making enough money to warrant the cost of making it. However, people seemed to disagree pretty heavily with General Mills as petitions popped up, and a lot of fans of the cereal demanded they bring it back. They did reintroduce it in 2014, but the flavor and texture is a lot different from the original box you could find in the 90s. In a way, the authentic French Toast Crunch cereal is lost to time. As we move from the 70s to the 80s to the 90s in terms of our lineup of foods, it would not be fair to start talking about the 2000s without mentioning Altoid Sours. Mars Wrigley first came out with the Sour Drop candy in the start of the 2000s, which in itself was a decade that defined a lot of what we have today, but this one is a fond memory that only some remember. With an attractive packaging consisting of these super colorful metal tins and an incredibly versatile and quality line of flavors, this candy would always be something you could bet on finding in your friend's bag. Hit versions like tangerine, raspberry, apple, mango, and citrus meant that it had every preference and audience covered. Altoid Sours worked so well because they struck the line between refreshingly sour and fruity in a perfect way. To this day, despite iconic candy's re-release of the Sour Drops under the name Retro Sours, the original taste is not matched. Nabisco came out with the most adorable cookies when they put Giggles Cookies out on shelves everywhere for the public to enjoy. Now usually, just having a smiley face-based snack is not enough to clear shelves out during grocery shopping trips, but when the snack was a sandwich cookie with many different fillings, each as rich as the last one, that goal starts to look a little more realistic. Kids would often eat them and collect the stickers that came with the packages, putting them on their toys and cars and whatnot. Some people do claim that they found the smiley design a bit unsettling, but all that would usually go away when they would taste the snack. Guess you can call that love at first bite, and honestly, good sandwich cookies have a way of doing that to you. Another snack that kids could never let go of in the 90s were these shark bites, which are exactly what they sound like. Gummies shaped like sharks that would come in this teal-blue packet with a massive, friendly-looking shark on them. Now, the design may not have been the most inspiring, but the taste was really innovative. Nobody ever had gummies like these, and most gummies out there did not match the intensity of the flavor or the softness of the bites. Most kids were especially strong fans of the white shark gummies, which tasted amazing. Plus, kids would buy packets of these to find rarer shark bites like the tiger shark. As far as fruity food went, this was hard to beat, and just like the animal it takes after, it reigned as an apex predator. Of course, people did not buy them to appreciate the efforts of the PR team, but because they were the perfect thing to take the edge off on a hot summer day. People have been eating popcorn in movie contexts since before our grandfathers were born, so that is really saying something. If you could get a whiff or taste of these like they used to be back then, you would know the hype was pretty understandable. They lasted 25 years up until Planters eventually took them off shelves in 2006, but popular demand would have them returning in 2018 with an entirely new packaging. Not that it was too different from the black cans we used to have, but what was now unfamiliar was the taste. People thought they were getting their beloved cheese balls back, but unfortunately, once you lose a snack, you never get it back the same way. Ever had those breadsticks that came with dip? Dunkaroos were a lot like that, except they were chocolate cookies that were accompanied by a frosting dip, which was all kinds of delicious. One of the most popular flavors in the 90s was the vanilla one, but it made a comeback later in the 2000s with the chocolate cookies and frosting flavor. However, it was still discontinued, as nostalgia baiting can only get you so far if you stray from what originally gathered your fan base. Nowadays, they are just a snack that people do not give too much attention to, except those who grew up with it. But back then, if your mom packed this for lunch, you were the kid everyone wanted to sit with. Some snacks have really short lifespans but really long-lasting impacts, and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle pies were the definition of that. These green pies, which came with a delectable pudding for dipping, were only on the market for 20 weeks before they were taken off, but people flocked to them like moths to a bright flame. Those 20 weeks were pretty bad for some other snacks, since everybody wanted to blow whatever change they had solely on Ninja Turtle pies. The best part was that it would always be in bulk, since one packet did not cost too much. They were stocking these up for the entire family, which makes sense since people had an idea that this collaboration would not last too long, and how right they were. A bit before the days of General Foods and General Mills, we had post-consumer brands who made their debut in America with Dino Pebbles. These colorful, fruity cereals featured cameos from characters from one of the most iconic cartoon shows of all time, the Flintstones. They would be called the Spookstoons, and a character called Dino. Besides the original fruity cereal flavor, they also had Cocoa Pebbles, which had crisp rice cereal. However, what a lot of people do not know, despite having grown up with this, is that Dino Pebbles were an imitation of Sugar Rice Crinkles, which did pretty well when they came out a while before Dino. Dino Pebbles got discontinued in 1993, just 3 years after they came out, but breakfast in those years was glorious. Many people ran campaigns to bring Dino Pebbles back, however the agenda was not fruitful. Soon, one of the utmost favorite snacks of the masses was off the shelves in order to make space for better and newer cereals. Speaking of the tropical, Libby's Fruit Float was a deeply beloved canned item that had real fruit in it, but that was not the kicker. Fruit Floats truly shined when they were mixed with milk, which resulted in this incredibly light but pudding-like dessert. The benefit was that it barely took 5 minutes to whip up, yet it felt like a meal that took an hour to recreate. They had different variations of the Fruit Float, like the 10-second one, which you could easily make with some milk, the float, and strawberries, and more complicated ones like the 10-minute Fruit Float, which turned it into a proper dessert. Despite getting discontinued a while after its 1974 introduction, This was one of the sweetest things you could buy and is dearly missed. Hubble Bubble Squeeze Pops were on the opposite end of the spectrum, as they were a snack that people who appreciated more bitter flavors loved dearly. Squeeze Pops came in flavors such as sour apple, sour watermelon, and sour blue raspberry, with a really retro and funky tube. The entire gimmick was that you had to squeeze it out of the tube to get it, which added a lot of weird satisfaction to the snack. You would think having to grip something hard to get your food out would make it less convenient and more annoying, but it seemed to have the opposite effect with the Squeeze Pops. Fans of the tube claimed that the flavor was so vivid and strong that it would actually take a while to finish one tiny serving, since if you ate it up too fast, you would get overwhelmed. Unfortunately, interest in them waned over the years, and Hubba Bubba discontinued the brand. Munch M's were Keebler's claim to fame, as these were one of the most trending crackers of the 1960s when they first came out. They continued to ride that high well into the 90s until they eventually met their end in the 2000s. Of course, most breakfast products do have a lifespan that companies expect. What Keebler never expected was how popular these would get, since even they did not know they had struck gold. Yellowish, tiny, and incredibly crunchy, Munch'ems tasted like crackers but had the same crunch and texture that a chip did. It was actually incredible how they managed to offer the best of both worlds like that, since crackers usually did not feel like eating a chip at all. Moreover, these were pretty good with some butter, which was a go-to choice for many Americans when they wanted an easy breakfast. Let's head on over to chocolate bars, and we have a pretty solid banger in that field to bring to you. Kudos granola bars were these milk chocolate granola cereal bars that Mars came up with in 1986, and they had a nutty sensation with a cocoa-centric flavor. The initial lineup of flavors consisted of nutty fudge, peanut butter, and chocolate, but future flavors would be Dove chocolate, M&Ms, and Snickers as well. The very first batches of the granola bar were a lot less granola and a lot more candy, despite being marketed as a healthy alternative to your typical candy bars. While they sold pretty well for being a rather bold and daring experiment, combining both typical candy notes with a chocolatey granola snack, Mars would discontinue them in 2017 as they were performing very poorly, and people did not see them as a healthy option. Nestlé's Quik Chocolate Milk Mix was the savior of mothers all around America. Kids would get up for school sharp at 6 a.m., and while the adults would have their tea or black coffee extra strong, the young would wake themselves up by a glass of hot chocolate milk. Nestlé's powder was one of the tastiest and most vibrant ones out there. It really had this comfortable chocolate flavor that was not too overbearing but not too light either. You just had to pour in the milk, the powder, and heat it up for a minute, and you were good to go. A lot of school days and early morning math classes went easier just because this was served up right before them. As of recently, Nestlé has discontinued the powder, since it is not doing as well as the 20th century era, but an entire generation of kids got their 7 a.m. nutrition thanks to this. Nobody knew exactly what was going on in the design room of Walls as they came up with Funny Feet, which was this popular strawberry ice cream that was, of all things, foot-shaped. While it came out in the 1980s, the company got a lot of mileage out of this product, even into the 90s, which was an extremely competitive era where all kinds of new food snacks were being invented. It was like a rat race to see who could come up with the next big thing, and Walls would not disappoint. However, despite staying in the race for a while, Funny Feet couldn't win as they did get axed during the late 1990s. An official in the company said it lost to things like Magnum, another popular ice cream launched in the same decade. Maybe they should have tried Hands instead. Ice creams were not all that was coming out. Even yogurt was seeing some love with things like Dannon's Sprinkl'ins in 1992, which was this yogurt with candy bits in it. There were lots of flavors, and you would get a separate packet of sprinkles to mix into the yogurt. Dannon was trying something new, keeping both the healthy side of its target audience in mind, along with the mass appeal and potential of candy. But it failed to incorporate both into something that really clicked. Sprinkl'ins were discontinued in the 2000s due to low sales and underperformance, and the company does not seem to have any plans to bring this one back. Just a few years after the Sprinkl'ins, post-consumer brands came up with Waffle Crisp, which was the same concept as Sprinkl'ins but with waffles and cereal instead of yogurt and candy. It tried to make this corn cereal, which was square-shaped, but contained maple syrup-flavored corn cereal bits, and it first came out in 1996. While others trying to make a mass-marketable gem out of fusion experiments did not find much success, Waffle Crisp still gained enough traction to last into the 2010s before it got discontinued. Post Foods did try to bring it back in 2021, but it just was not the same goodness as before. Maybe they changed their maple syrup, but why fix a clock that is not broken? Kellogg's Yogos were also a famous moment for candy and snacks that made their debut in 2005, and they were at first pretty similar to M&Ms in both the general premise and the look of the snack. The difference was that these were covered in a crunchy yogurt shell, but they were fruit-flavored and more chewy than crunchy. People always wondered if the different colors meant different flavors like in M&Ms, but nobody cared about that too much since the Munch factor outweighed everything else. Only 5 years later, they would get shelved, pun intended, and disappear, and this was because there were health concerns about the amount of sugar in the snacks. America's dietary problems seem to have some pretty long-held roots, but our snack game is truly on point even with all the discontinuations. This is one long memory lane, but we have reached the end now. Share your food memories in the comments below and leave a like if you enjoyed the video.